All right. Let's talk about drawing the figure in perspective. We have the different formulas, right? Where you've got the head, and then you've got a rib cage, and you've got a pelvis, and we want to make sure that the axis of the head is going in this direction, the long axis. I don't know if you can see that. And then the neck is going in this direction, and then the long axis of the rib cage is going in this direction, and then the pelvic tilt is tipping forward, so that would be going in this direction. But the point is, all of these forms are contrasting in the planes. See? We want the contrast of the planes. We don't want, I don't know if I can even do this, a head, a neck, and a rib cage, and a pelvis, and a person standing with their feet. It's hard to draw wrong, once you get used to it. Like this sort of static pose where it's a person just standing, it's very boring. And you don't want that. You want the person to be having an attitude of a normal stance. We want these forms to flow. Okay? We want the front to curve in this direction. We want the back leg to curve in this direction. We want the curve in this way and the curve in this way. In this position, there's only one really straight vertical, and that's the muscles of the lower back. Right here. The muscle of the lower back is the only thing that's going to be straight after you put on all of the meat and fat and muscle and bones, rib cage, belly, crotch, whatever. Okay? So this is your only straight vertical in the lower back. Drawing the figure as nebulous elliptical forms doesn't really give you the volume though. So instead of thinking of a head like this, where you are drawing the crosshairs, if you're trying to figure it out in perspective, try and draw a plane where this plane here represents the face. This represents the top of the head. This represents the side of the head. You can draw the neck as a cylinder. It doesn't matter as much. But if you think of the rib cage as being a plane that is tipping backwards, this being the side of the rib cage, and because it's tipping backwards, we see the underside of this plane, assuming there's no meat and flesh and whatnot. And then you would have the rib cage also as a box, kind of tipping forward. We'd see the front. Did I say rib cage? I meant pelvis. And then we have the side. So drawing these forms as boxes makes it easier to understand. You can have your center line and everything and face over here, and that'll give you information for the face, and then you can get the edges and cut into that form down to the chin, back up to the jawline, over the ear, put the rib cage here, or not the rib cage, the hairline here, come down to the pit of the neck, which is where the clavicles meet, right here, pit of the neck, comes down the sternum, right? We get the solar plexus. This comes down to the front here. Somewhere is the belly button. You've got the top of the iliac crest, which is this box here, and that comes down to the anatomical center, which is the pelvic bone above the genitals. All right. Then from here you can figure out what exactly are the abs doing and the obliques coming in, right? There might be a pad of fat in between here. As this comes down, you'll have the what do you call it? The pectorals coming across. You got the deltoids and whatnot, and the arm. And I'm drawing the muscles before I'm actually drawing the cylinder of the arm. And I prefer to think of these limbs as cylindrical forms. Just for me, it feels better. As I get to the wrist, though, try to think of the end of it as being more of a square shape or a rectangular shape. But the basis is you have boxes where you can look down on top of somebody's head, and the head, if we're looking down at them, is going to be above the neck, and you might not see the neck, right? You might not see the neck below the head, but the head is definitely on top of the shoulders. And if the rib cage is a box, and say they're leaning forward, we have the top of the shoulders, the front of the chest, and the side of the chest. I'm kind of adjusting as I'm going along. And then the pelvis beneath that would also be a box. And just the length of the rib cage is not as important. The idea I'm trying to express here is that the head, this plane, and this form, right here, is in front of the rib cage, and we're seeing the top of the rib cage, right? We're seeing the side here, and for the pelvis, we're not going to see the top of it because it's obviously inside the body. But if you're to figure out the form, the pelvis is beneath the bottom of the rib cage. Okay? And from there you can calculate, okay, so the legs are coming down, and maybe they're just cylinders. I'll just keep it really simple, right? And we're looking down at a figure. Down at a figure. Their feet, whatever. And it's tricky because the pelvic bone here, the great trochanter, if this is your pelvis, right, and there's a ball and socket joint here that connects to your femur that comes down, this bone, this protrusion on the femur is the great trochanter, and that lines up with the bottom of the pubic bone where the genitals would be, right? All of this is your anatomical center. So knowing that this distance from the top of the head here down to this anatomical center should be equal to the bottom of the feet from this point, like right here. This is the halfway point. Now, it's in perspective. So as some stuff moves away from you, this one here is going to be a little shorter. Oh, and by the way, the halfway point of this line, like not literally here, I'm going to scooch it down because it's in perspective, and think the distances get smaller as they go. This distance here from here should be equal, but in perspective, the one further away is going to be smaller. This here is the bottom of the kneecap. The bottom of the kneecap meets the halfway point from the anatomical center to the bottom of the foot. Okay? So this is a figure looking down. Now, if we calculate someone looking up, I'm going to start here with a pelvis. Let's say I have a pelvis here, and I've got a plane, and I'm going to exaggerate this quite a bit. And I'm imagining the pelvis being something like this, right? Where This is the bottom of the iliac crest of the pelvis right here. This is the anatomical center. This is where the bone of the hip would protrude going down towards the femur, right? But we're interested in this box that I'm actually doing. This here is the bottom of that pelvis, and we are looking upwards. So assume that the pelvis is leaning back a little bit. So I'm just, not the pelvis, the rib cage. So I'm just going to draw it as though we are looking at the bottom of that form. See, this is the bottom of the rib cage. And then we can draw a neck. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but we would see the underside of the jaw, which on a cube, right, we would see the bottom of the box that contains the head. See, we see the bottom, the bottom, the bottom of all of these three forms. And we are looking up at this figure. Now, the forms of the arm, like you would draw a normal cylinder where the space between the long ends of the upper arm would be equal. But you can create a little bit of perspective where the bottom of this cylinder is bigger as it comes down. And you could even do it also with another large form coming down. So this is how you would distort the hand, okay? Or distort the arm as it's coming towards camera. But being able to imagine extreme situations, like if I draw this even more extreme, kind of closer to this, right? With a neck here, a shoulder, we're looking at someone who is standing. And these start to become like really simple formulas where you can get, you know, people looking down, you know, from above. But once you're able to do that, you can just invent as you go along. You can do extreme perspective where, let's say, this is a face, right? And this is a head, and then we have the neck, and then we have the top of the shoulders going backwards down the rib cage, or yeah, to the pelvis, right? Going down to the cylinder of the legs, and the hands coming forward. Let's say doing this sort of a path for the cylinders. And let's change this part. Let's make this hand come forward. So let me see. Now I'm just gonna gosh, I gotta keep going. We've got a hand. All right, so I'll just stop here. I don't want to get in the fingers. But it becomes Superman, right? We've solved the perspective, you know, of figuring out the direction of where everything is going, right? His head, his form of his head is in front of the top of his rib cage, which is in front of his pelvis, which is in front of his thighs, which is in front of his lower legs. But you're stacking and creating this form. If I have this hand coming here, and then maybe I'll do the hand over here, the palm in perspective, and then the fingers. I'm just going to draw the fingers like as a formula, as a shape here, and then here. One of the things I want you to notice is that the form of his arm is in front of the rib cage, right? The form of his forearm is in front of his upper arm. and you try to make something that is in back go behind the form here. So you try to emphasize the rib cage going behind the arm. Try to emphasize the pelvis going behind the rib cage, and so on and so forth. The form of the buttocks is in front of the top of the lower leg, which is in front of the calf. But if you take say a line here, right? We have two lines, two parallel lines. Means nothing. But add an ellipse and a curve on the end, suddenly it becomes a cylinder. But if you have something behind, say another cylinder, having the emphasis on the line behind this line here, like this interrupts it, helps it push it forward in the picture plane to help it feel like one item, one element, one form is in front of the other. All right, so that's just a quick demo on figure drawing. I'm going to show you some drawings that are like way old. I went through all my stuff trying to find some perspective reference from school. Like down here at the bottom, this is my teacher explaining how to project people in space. You know, you can see the vanishing point he put down, and he's starting to create different people. I think that's my teacher. I think this one was mine, trying to explain, but he did his to explain. So you could draw characters looking up from below from your imagination, or you can draw characters from above looking down, also using your imagination. This is like from school, like 30 years ago. Like I would get bored and during lectures and just start doodling. So this is one of my doodles from one of those perspective classes. And I just came up with a story, and maybe I will scan this and color it, because there's a lot of little weird sketches that I've done that I never did anything with, and it would be fun, I think, to just sort of play with them. I also have a weird sense of humor. I also added a vulture here, but there was no internet at the time, so this vulture was from my imagination. And your imagination is only as good as the time you've spent to observe a particular thing. But if you can't observe the thing, understand simple formulas that enable you to figure that stuff out. Okay? So that is it for this lecture. Hopefully that's helpful. Hopefully you will be able to apply this in your later assignments. I would like to see indications of people in your perspective environments. So do your best and give that a shot. Okay? Good luck, everybody.